Alrighty, good day everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited to have this webinar and to talk about our partnership with KMC Controls and CopperTree Analytics. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you come up with questions during this webinar, please feel free in the chat on the right-hand side of your window to go ahead and add those questions. We will have a time of questions and answers at the end. And we're going to try to hit as many of those questions as possible, whether they're questions about KMC Commander or the Kaizen platform from an analytics perspective. We are here to help and answer as many of those questions as possible. Additionally, this webinar is going to be recorded. It is being recorded right now and will be made available over the next couple of days. So if there's something that you heard and you want to go back and listen to, that'll be available to you, as well as if this is information you want to share with anyone else in your organization, you'll be welcome to share that link. With that, why don't we go ahead and get started? My name is Tim Vogel. I am the Director of IoT with KMC Controls. My primary responsibility is to build and support our KMC Commander platform with our internal team members, with our integration partners, and with our system integrator partners. And with me from CopperTree Analytics is Keith.
Hello, everyone. I'm Keith LaRose from CopperTree. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing. In addition to heading up the team that supports our customers and reaches out to the market, I also work with strategic partners, and KMC Controls is one of those strategic partners. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you all about the role of analytics and how we work with KMC and the Commander platform.
Excellent, Keith. I am glad that you are here. So today we're going to be talking through a number of items. We're going to do just some importance of analytics as a whole. We'll talk about building an analytics platform and in terms of what CopperTree is able to provide for integrators, ultimately driving the largest amount of value for end users. We'll talk about the cloud technology that CopperTree is using, particularly around this partnership to get that data, and that's what we'll ultimately be starting with first. Then we'll talk about the facility management side and the energy management side and how that can impact facilities and the occupants and the owners. Additionally, just the importance of comfort and safety around using all the same technology. To get started, I'd like to talk a little bit about KMC Controls. For those that may not be familiar, KMC Controls has been in business for 50 years. We're family owned outside about 2 hours east of Chicago in northern Indiana, where we engineer, manufacture, and distribute all of our full line of HVAC controls, whether it's BACnet, MSTP, BACnet IP. And then we also have our cloud-based platform, which will be a part of our conversation today, KMC Commander, and how all that data, not only from KMC, but multiple other building systems can be brought in. Our mission statement is important to us, and we take it very seriously. That is to provide innovative and intuitive solutions from responsive and supportive people. Each word that we've bolded are things that, again, we take very serious. We're very intentional about making sure our products are innovative, that they're as easy to use as possible and constantly evolving to be easier to use, to save time, money, and resources. And then we also want to have top-in-class support, not only for our system integrator partners, but also end users and our integration partners like CopperTree. We want to be as responsive as we can be and keep communication lines open so we could fix problems if they arise, but also just help you go out and win as many projects as easily as possible. Keith, why don't you tell us a little bit about CopperTree?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. CopperTree Analytics is a Canadian-based company with operations and customers around several continents in the world. We offer a platform called Kaizen, and the root word of Kaizen comes from the Japanese language, and it means continuous improvement. So we're really big believers in that mantra and that process. And we've built our software platform around that, continuously improving buildings and operations. So we employ, a branch of the AI tree, so a lot of machine learning and different algorithms to help improve and identify issues within buildings. Next slide, please, Tim. So we've been associated with our former parent companies and involved in the buildings control industry for close to 40 years as part of that lineage. Currently deployed to 2,500 buildings on 4 continents, and each day we bring in about 1.1 billion data samples from those building systems. So that's quite a bit of data, and that's representing about a few 100 million square feet of building stock around the world. So thank you very much, Tim. Back to you.
Excellent. So talking about bringing in all those data points, when we talk about a KMC and CopperTree partnership, what we're talking about is how can we take data out of the building and streamline that information up to the cloud, and then via an API connection, take all that data over to CopperTree so that now they can create all of those great insights that Keith will be sharing with you later. So a key part of this is KMC Commander. You may be familiar with all of the green boxes and controls that we have, as well as the wall thermostats and wall sensors, VAV controllers, whatever it may be. That's all on the KMC side, but really KMC Commander communicates multiple open protocols. So it's not only KMC equipment that we can communicate with, but multiple other varieties covering a majority of the building systems in the market. We take a gateway and we place it in that building and communicate up to our cloud, streamlining all that information into our platform. And as a platform, we're proud to partner with Intel. We're an Intel market-ready solution, which offers us quite a bit of visibility into the market, but also a partner in terms of going and deploying solutions for a huge number of clients. Our platform is bringing in about 30 million data points a day, a huge number of API calls, which is very important when you're talking about being able to do integrations with partners. We're in over 1,000 buildings with a very high level of uptime, which is important when you're talking about cloud-based systems for building automation. And in a few slides, I'll talk a little bit more about those brands of equipment that we've brought in. We're also partners, and we sit on the board of advisors with the Channel Company, and they identified us this year as a top 50 IoT solution. So we're very proud of that as well. In terms of who we work with a huge number of clients. Some of the ones that are most recognizable we have on the slide here. And they span the gamut in terms of the size of the building, the type of the building, the vertical that we're able to deploy in. Ultimately, if there is a built environment, we are interested in bringing that data to the cloud and making as much use of it as possible. Now, all those brands and all those customers and the many others that we have, they have all kinds of equipment in the space. And this is where those open protocols really become a huge part of our strategy. We communicate BACnet, Modbus, SNMP. If there's something more kind of specialized that we need to do localized API calls, we can do that as well. But as we know, there's sort of 2 buckets in the space. There's open systems and there's more proprietary systems. KMC Controls is a very close direct partner with Tritium. And in those proprietary those cases where there are proprietary systems, they're a wonderful partner to bring into the fold to be able to use their translation drivers to be able to get that data open up into BACnet and now bring a whole multitude of options to your smart building platform. Once we bring this data in, the very first thing we do is we discover the devices and we discover the points and we bring in the points that you want to see. When we discover those points, we create what's called a profile. And in that profile, we are actually tagging and normalizing all the data using Project Haystack tagging. And we're constantly evolving and improving those tags. That tagging is going to be extremely important, and Keith will talk about that later as we talk about integration and normalizing data. But that is a key part, that every piece of data that comes into our system is brought in, controlled, maintained, and then normalized for data use. Now, when we kind of step back a little bit and talk about Commander and some of the things that we solve, I think we first have to look at the gaps that a lot of traditional systems leave, whether it's siloed and disconnected systems, either within a single building or throughout a portfolio of buildings. It can also be very expensive to custom build tenant visibility and control outside of the mechanical room or the facility management team. Oftentimes, when you do it, it's not going to be mobile friendly. It's not going to be cloud-based. And if it is, that introduces all kinds of security concerns. at the end of the day, we want to be as easy as possible to integrate into what is already in that building, and then to solve an immediate need, and then be able to grow and be flexible as time and budget allows. And so with Commander, what we're able to do is connect those multiple systems into a single unified pane of glass without replacing the systems themselves. We streamline all that communication to the cloud, and we prioritize security. And we also allow multiple tenants and occupants, whoever it may be, to have specialized and custom visualization and control into the systems. We've now simplified your visibility into those buildings, making it easier for service maintenance. We can extend the resources that are already there by being able to sit on top of the systems that are already there. And ultimately, we have a huge amount of long-term value, because once Commander's in, now we have this growing ecosystem of partners, with CopperTree being one of those key partners, and making that data, democratizing that data, and making it available for use across the board. From a dashboarding standpoint, this is what we call cards and decks. So across the top is multiple different varieties of cards, and along the bottom is a revolving carousel that we call a deck. But we also have multiple other varieties of cards as well. As you may have seen on some LinkedIn posts, or if you were at our customer event recently, we're also going to be releasing a new UI, which we're very, very excited about. Not here to talk about that today, but if you're looking at this now and you start to see some different visualizations in the near term, we're very excited to begin sharing that very, very soon. This is also really important from the conversation we're having today. Is the three pillars that we focus on, or the three legs to the easy stool, as I like to say, is open, secure, and scalable. Those are the three things we focus on with every new upgrade or enhancement that we make. It's got to be secure. Security, it has to be paramount, particularly when we're talking about the growing concerns around cybersecurity and the threats that are emerging in the market. It's got to be scalable, which means easy and affordable for a small building, but also capable to be scaled out for hundreds or thousands of buildings. And then open. Open is not only just the protocols that we're speaking locally, but it's what can I do with the data? Is the data mine? Can I do what I want with it? And that's where our open API comes into focus. And then our integration partnership with CopperTree Analytics also. Very, very important. Just to quickly go over some basic features of Commander, not only can we monitor through those dashboards, but we could also control changing set points, turning things on and off, whether that's with manual override settings or with something like schedules. All those data points are stored long-term and shared then with our CopperTree partner if you choose to go with analytics. Additionally, we could do alarms. There's messaging built in out of the box via text and email. We can give custom user access. And also a key benefit is if Commander 5.0 comes out, you never have to go do a cost-benefit analysis with your customers. Or if you're an end user, you don't have to consider, do I upgrade or not? All Commander projects are automatically updated at the hardware and software level. So every time you log in, you're getting the latest and greatest. And every time you access the box or the box is communicating with the BAS, it's using the latest and greatest drivers or integration sets that we put in. All of that is completely customizable to the end user and what's needed, whether it's, again, trends, schedules, alarms, or dashboards. But then I'll go over this rather quickly and turn it back over to Keith. But our open API is fully documented and fully supported. It's not just a second thought. We've really built an API-first dashboard. That project haystack tagging is key. While we do it with every data point, when you talk about using that data, you have to be able to normalize it, especially even not just within a single building, but when you're looking at multiple buildings at a time, being able to baseline one, compare that with the performance of another, regardless of the building automation system that's in there. And then with that comes our integration and add-on partners, whether it's Epiphany systems for looking at the security posture of your building, whether it's Google for doing single sign-on or custom machine learning AI, You can use Commander AQ to look and score your building based on common standards like well, reset, or ASHRAE, and then give all kinds of different views for multiple stakeholders around indoor air quality. And then CopperTree, how can you use this data and get all the benefits that Keith is about to share with you, both in monitoring and alarming and making sure that you're running your building as efficiently as possible. So with that, Keith, I turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about the importance of analytics and how we partner together to make that a reality.
All right, thank you very much, Tim. Great. So great segue into, we've got all this data, typically a big heavy lift on our side, but, without partnering with something like KMC Commander's platform would be the acquisition and the contextualization, normalization, and the understanding of all that data. So adding metadata to it. One great thing that Tim mentioned is that data flows into our platform through our integration with KMC Commander, pre-tagged. That reduces this first pillar here, which is acquire the data. We've acquired the data through a common API connection. Makes everyone's lives a lot easier, frankly. Allows us to focus on the analysis, the prioritization, and then the verification of the results of the tasks that have been achieved. So those are really the four things. We typically acquire the data, in this case through the partnership, that is handled through the KMC Commander platform. Tag data comes in, we apply algorithms to that data en masse. So it's no longer a one-to-one. We have to write an algorithm and attach it to individual pieces of data. We have common normalized data streams coming in with tags. We can apply in bulk the analytics algorithms to that data, helping the customers therefore prioritize and verify the results of that. So we'll get into a little bit more on some of the goals and features of analytics. Generally speaking, if we're looking at data being the bottom of the pyramid here, it's disconnected, it's not structured, it's not tagged. We don't really know what it is. It's just discrete data. It's frankly very useless in its, by itself. It's very manual if you look at it that way. Moving up the pyramid, we're adding information, we're tagging it, we're organizing the data into logical hierarchies, into groups. This piece of equipment belongs to this data, et cetera. And that's what we get directly from the KMC Commander platform. Furthermore, where we kind of pick up here at CopperTree with Kaizen is we add empirical and evidence-based knowledge and wisdom to that data from the algorithm sets. Some of those are from ASHRAE standards, from NIST or algorithms, and then of course best practices for design and operation of buildings. So that knowledge and wisdom then gets applied to the contextualized metadata enabled data that we're receiving from, in this case, the KMC Commander platform. And that's really where you want to be. You want to be making decisions based on wisdom and not mucking around, so to speak, down in the data layer, which is already handled for you. So typically, and why this is important is because there's a lot of focus these days. We do key in a lot on sustainability, greenhouse gas emission reduction. That's been a very hot topic in most of the world lately. And many folks don't know that buildings account for a very large percentage, almost 40% of North America's CO2 emissions, and about 70% of electricity load, of which HVAC and lighting is a huge contributor. So with very low overhead and low capital expenditures, you can make a very significant impact on those greenhouse gas emissions and improve the sustainability of your facilities, which therefore lead to overall greenhouse gas emission reductions. So it is very important. There's other focuses around analytics, but we tend to see that a lot of customers are very interested in the sustainability picture, let alone of course energy costs. So some of the goals of analytics and the results that are achieved focus around, of course, energy reduction. So that does reduce, operational costs for our customers, of course. But beyond that, of course, it does increase sustainability and makes our customers better environmental stewards. But further to that, equipment life is very important. Capital assets that are being put into these buildings are typically very expensive, and it is possible to operate them in a fashion which is detrimental to their long-term longevity. So increasing equipment life cycles and the amount of time that those assets are serving our customers is a paramount part of what we do. And a lot of times there's been a lot of staff shortages. It's hard to get people and maintenance for buildings. So a lot of our customers are experiencing large piles of deferred maintenance, which is a liability. And if you go to sell a building, a lot of times or acquire a building, that's something that a lot of the sellers or the buyers want to know, is how much deferred maintenance has there been, and has maintenance being performed. And with unfocused maintenance and the traditional preventive maintenance functions, it is easy to kind of gather up a lot of deferred maintenance if you're not focusing specifically on the systems that need to be looked at. So analytics really helps to focus the maintenance tasks on systems that need it, and it allows you a little bit to ignore systems that may not need the maintenance for the time being, while kind of keeping up with your maintenance goals. So beyond that, of course, there is sort of the stakeholder perspective. So you have leaseholders, you have occupants, you have patients. If we're talking about a hospital, or if we're talking about an airport, it's passengers, etc. Thermal comfort is very important, and there are studies that show a very clear link between thermal comfort and productivity of employees. And of course, when we start talking about very specific processes like humidity control, if we're speaking about a hospital or critical environment, humidity control can be a life and death issue. It can contribute to safer environments in operating theaters and ICUs, and certainly, as Tim was mentioning around indoor air quality, certainly with the COVID-19 pandemic, we can use data and analytics, both in the Commander AQ application, but also in CopperTree's Kaizen, to analyze indoor safety, basically air changes per hour, outdoor air fraction, the amount of fresh air being brought in, and the ventilation rates that are being applied to the building can have a pretty big impact. There's a lot of news around that in the schools in particular, and certainly hospitals. So this data is very useful for some very important applications. All of which leads, of course, to cost avoidances. So if you can, avoid replacing a piece of equipment early, if you can do better maintenance, you can make employees or patients safer and more productive. That all, leads to cost avoidance, increased reliability, and a reduction in the amount of unplanned maintenance that needs to happen within facilities. So most of this is music to our customers' ears. And then another thing to really mention is that a lot of times it's our customers struggle to stick a pin in exactly what the benefit of a certain initiative was. So we implemented a new system, we changed some sequences. What was the result of that, the net result to our organization? And so doing measurement and verification of the initiatives that are planned for your buildings and for your systems is a key output of analytics too. So it takes the guesswork out of it, and frankly, it sets you up for future programs. So if you can, point to and prove that a certain initiative was very productive and that it paid back very quickly, it helps our customers to create business cases to justify expenditures that will ultimately pay back quickly also. So those are some of the main goals. Just to give an idea of how the integration works specifically between the KMC Commander and the CopperTree Kaizen server. So KMC is acquiring data and from the building automation system, applying their smarts to it. And then there is an API connection. So we use a REST API connection between the KMC Commander system and Kaizen, which really cuts down a lot of the effort required to integrate two different systems to the building automation. So rather than both of us integrating, why not just integrate in a cloud-to-cloud application, which is what this is. And there is some good security between the two, and encryption between the two. And then the facility staff benefit from being able to use the data streams and the applications from both systems. So really streamlines and helps to cut down on the amount of integration that might be required between the two. As far as the analytics platform Kaizen, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, what it offers is portfolio and building and system level diagnostics. So what we're doing is fault detection and diagnostics, which applies algorithms to all the data that are coming from different pieces of equipment and different systems in the building, and it really applies those in a way that is actionable. So you'll see in the dashboard picture here, there is a potential savings widget, and what a user can do is say, wow, that looks like a big number, I should click there, and they click on it, and it presents the customer with a list of actionable insights, we call them, which are things that a customer or facility staff can undertake with an estimated payback. So those are based on equipment factors, sizes, kilowatt ratings, and actually it every week will re-trigger with a new value. So if it sees a piece of equipment is running outside of schedule a certain amount, or is not employing free cooling from outdoor air and those types of things, it does an estimate of how much savings could be attributable to that issue if it were resolved. And then over here, you have actually a systems dashboard showing all of the different algorithms that are applied to a piece of equipment. And again, those are actionable and can be undertaken by staff. So that's the fault detection diagnostics piece. It also scales up to customers who have portfolios or multiple buildings. It scales up to what we call our portfolio dashboard. So if you have a campus of buildings, multiple buildings strewn across the world even, and those are all connected to the platform, you can then evaluate your buildings against each other for metrics like potential savings, realized savings, avoidable cost, comfort impacts, property impacts. So there's a number of different metrics that are calculated and presented to a user through the platform that allow you to go from really the 50,000 foot view of, oh, that looks like my worst building for this metric, and clicking on it and drilling down into the building's dashboard, seeing which systems within that building are contributing to those issues, clicking on those, and then drilling down further. So you can go all the way from, I have 20 buildings in 4 different countries, down to, oh, look at this air handling unit has a supply fan issue, right? So it's very scalable in that way. The next piece of the puzzle is we have another platform called Kaizen Energy, and what its focus is really is it's an energy information system. So it takes energy data from a portfolio as well, or an individual building, depending on what we're connecting to, and it does things like heating and cooling degree day weather normalizing to really compare apples to apples, each building to each other within a portfolio, or a building to its own baseline. And it gets rid of probably the most important variable, which is weather conditions. So obviously, occupancy data would be another that we can normalize to, which is less common to have available. Mostly though, we will weather normalize. So we can say that building's performing less well than it should, given the model that we've done previously of how it should be performing, flagging out of my entire set of buildings, this one in red, it needs to be looked at because it's not performing to the model that's been generated by the software. So that also allows us to then, do performance analysis. So, our energy has increased or decreased by this percentage weather normalized over time. And a lot of our customers, frankly, struggle to produce these types of analyses for themselves. They might be doing this in Excel. They might have an energy metering system, but really it doesn't do weather normalizing or benchmarking. So it makes this much more functional for those folks to manage their energy. So that's Kaizen Energy. And wanted to walk you through a case study of a project that we did with KMC and Commander. This was the first project we did as an integration partner. It was for a mid-sized medical building. This was working with a KMC Commander systems integrator on the other side. So what we were able to achieve there was an identification of over $10,000 in annual energy savings. And this isn't a large building by any means. It's a RTU, a rooftop unit, and VAV-based system. And several maintenance-related opportunities were also highlighted as part of this. Surprisingly, we connected to the API connection to the KMC Commander, and we had this data analyzed and turned back over to the systems integrator within about a week or two. That was the total length of that integration and the results coming back to the SI. And now we can leverage that connection that we've developed through this partnership for all other projects. Really, it's just changing the Commander instance that we're looking at. It goes through and it grabs all of the histories and all of the project haystack tags that are inside that building, and we can scale that from this building to any other building very quickly. So just walking through some of the findings that were uncovered. It might be hard to see these, but we certainly can provide these to you under a different format if you'd like. On the left-hand side, we identified a fairly common occurrence of heating and cooling simultaneously within the rooftop unit. So what was happening there was, we were bringing in air and overheating it, sending it down, or so I guess in this case it was overcooling it, sending it to the zones, and the zones were reheating the air. I believe was what was happening here. So obviously that's a fairly significant waste of energy and money. And then the right-hand side here, we identified that the airflow was oversupplying air. So the airflow set points were too high, and even though the zones weren't requiring that, and it was already satisfying airflow set points within those zones, and we ranked the systems by worst to least erroneous in this particular format. So you can see the worst performing zone. So a maintenance professional can actually grab this and say, wow, look at these zones here I'm going to focus on. And we give a KPI score against each of those that really dials it in and tells you exactly which units are experiencing that issue. So this represents an opportunity to reduce the electricity consumption of the fans, the supply fans that are providing air for this building. So that was a fairly interesting finding as well. Moving on, we are able to deploy what we call virtual metering. So most buildings will have, a main electricity and main gas meter, et cetera. But what's very interesting about the analytics is that we can apply similar formula to what meters use, which in the case of a motor would be a horsepower conversion to kilowatts, and then multiply that by runtime of a piece of equipment, and we come out with a kilowatt hour meter for pieces of equipment that you normally wouldn't apply a sub-meter to. So in certain, in LEED certification, for instance, anything that's 10% or more of the building's total energy consumption requires a sub-meter. But what about individual pumps, circulator pumps, fans, those types of small pieces of equipment? Those typically are not metered. So even though you might identify that your energy increased over time, you may not be able to pinpoint exactly where that energy increase has occurred. So in the case of virtual metering, we're able to apply virtual metering to individual pieces of equipment. And here you can see the rooftop unit. You can see a daily profile of its operation of over time, the supply and return fans, and you can see that they're fairly active throughout the night. And then midday, they scale down a little bit more and then start using more energy around 4 p.m. through to 8 p.m. So you can look at the profile of the overall consumption of the building at a much more granular level, identifying issues that might be occurring without the need to install physical meters on the system. This is all points that are coming through the KMC Commander platform. In this case, we use a status point, maybe a command point, and we look at is the equipment running? Because we know the horsepower of that equipment, we do the multiplication, and the resulting energy consumption comes out of that. So those are a couple of examples of the screens that were showing up in the platform. The next screen here is the actual, what we call Insight Management Portal. So this is the typical workspace that a customer will use in the platform. You'll see there's a few columns here. The priority as defined by the algorithm itself, the hours of faulty operation, which is a really cool metric. What this is essentially calculating the number of hours in the period that we've selected to look at. So you pick a date range, and it tells you how many hours of faulty operation have occurred for each of these faults. So for instance, this particular one here is showing that the rooftop unit is suffering from continuously oscillating control signals. So simultaneously heating and cooling, turning on and off continuously. It's also running 24/7 with no apparent schedule. So clearly this piece of equipment needs to be looked at because all three of those conditions are not great. And we've tagged that as being about a $3,500 a year problem in this particular unit. If it were not to be addressed, for the next year, let's say. So it allows operators to really, and you can sort and filter by any of these columns and say, well, show me the worst, potential cost savings issues. You can filter to when it's been active. You can assign these issues to an operator, to a user, mark them as open, closed, in progress, export these. You can create custom views. And then subscribe to them so that an email will show up to your inbox, once a week or once a day, depending on how often you'd like them. Listing these issues that you can then click on, and it brings you right to the platform, during which, of course, you can zoom in on the underlying data that's coming from it. So all of that is typically tasks that a building operator would be doing in a more manual fashion, either proactively opening up the BAS system graphics and looking for these issues, or waiting for BAS alarms to come. But this is done in a much more sort of holistic, high-level approach where the needles in a haystack are actually discovered and presented to them without them having to go hunt for those issues. Or worst case, of course, an occupant complaining. So we're trying to get away from reactive maintenance towards this more proactive maintenance, where these issues, a lot of them won't create comfort issues. So you won't get a complaint from an operator, and you may, or from a tenant, I should say, and you may not get an alarm from the BAS system, because the BAS is maintaining room temperature set point, for instance, but it's doing it in a way that is causing damage or that is wasting energy. So that's really the key to this is those needles in a haystack that we can uncover and present, and also create business cases for fixing. That's the big thing here, is putting a dollar value or a number of hours or greenhouse gas emission impact on something really helps to motivate and create the business case to get it fixed. And a lot of times these are control sequence optimizations that can be done, a leaking valve or a linkage that's broken, or something that's a fairly short and easy fix to address. All right, Tim, I don't know if you want to jump in back and guide us through the rest of these questions and things like that.
Absolutely. So, what happens next? If you guys are interested, Keith and I are both available, or your KMC AVP available to take any of your questions and to set up a free demo. And let's kind of dig in a little bit more. What we didn't do here is any live demo, and I know Keith and I are both always excited with every opportunity we have to have those kinds of conversations and show off what our development teams have spent so much time and effort and energy working on. I know every time I've seen the CopperTree platform, I've just been very, very impressed with the kind of real insights that you get and how you're able to use those insights. And now having something like Commander in conjunction, just like Keith said, if there's it doesn't seem like there's a schedule here. Well, in Commander, you can go and set a schedule for that immediately, and then begin to see, the benefits of just setting a schedule, which we all know is a huge opportunity for us in the marketplace. Additionally, change set points, see how it reacts, come back to Kaizen and see, what the benefit of a set point override was. Did it make a change? Was that really the issue? Which only then informs Kaizen even more. So please, absolutely reach out and let's set up that next call. And if you're a system integrator, we're happy to have to help you pitch these solutions to end users. And if you're an end user looking for a system integrator, we both have excellent partners around North America and also the world that we can team you up with. So we do have some questions. The first question I have for you, Adam has asked, and then it was actually answered by Joe, but Keith, maybe you could elaborate a little bit more. Can the algorithms be modified on a local level by an admin, or is that something that a CopperTree professional has to do? Keith, I'm sorry, I believe you're muted.
There we go. Got to do that every day, at least once. So yeah, there's definitely options for both approaches. We do offer a turnkey application as well, where we can program and turn it over and then run it for you as part of a managed services approach. But we do have partners who learn how to do it all themselves, and local admins can get on there and create their own algorithms, just as Joe's answer says. Create them, modify them, and apply them in bulk. And the cool thing is you can create an algorithm template, and then you can apply the template in the future to other projects or to new systems or new buildings within the application, and go and modify and tweak them to your heart's content. So there's also a very large library of existing algorithms that have been developed over years and years of us working. And those are actually what we call a community library of algorithms. Some of them are developed by CopperTree. Some of them follow, ASHRAE guideline 36 or NIST rules. And others are actually written by our systems integrators and partners and customers. So we have universities, for instance, who take it upon themselves and implement Kaizen and write their own algorithms and then share those to the library. And those are free of charge for anyone to get involved with and grab them, bring them into their building, and then further modify them. So, yeah.
Excellent. No, that's good. Mitchell has asked, and I think this could maybe be a broader conversation also about cybersecurity in general. Is the system functional, or I'm assuming compatible with OKTA or LDAP logins? So you could talk a little bit about what you do around single sign-on, but then also just cybersecurity in general. What is there for the client's data? How secure is it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If we're talking, I'm assuming this are aimed at our platform in particular as far as the questions. But Tim, feel free to jump in on the KMC side too. But so we do employ a single sign-on application, which is called Auth0. And so what you do there is across our platform anyhow, that is integrated. So when you sign into one, the other ones are signed into, and it is configurable to be integrated with Active Directory, other single sign-on applications. So absolutely, yeah. So that does work. And then as far as the overall cybersecurity discussion, this is a much larger topic, but we are very big believers in security. And so all the communications use strong encryption. So TLS 1.3 between, either if we're connecting directly to a building or if we're doing API connections between KMC's platform and ours, there are certificates being used and exchange of data that is using an encrypted tunnel that goes between the two applications. And then, of course, on the browser level, HTTPS employed there, of course, to secure the communication between the user's browser and the cloud platform, which in our case is hosted on both Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure. So.
From a KMC Commander standpoint, we offer Google single sign-on as a means of adding some of those third-party enterprise or user management systems. But we could also do a number of other single sign-ons. OAuth is something that we've also done when it comes to like something like our partner portal. Really just, it's all about having a conversation and working with us to figure out what you need. And then also from a security standpoint, Commander is extremely secure in how we communicate with the building. Everything is gateway initiated, where there is no tunnel into the building. There is no direct access to the building automation system from outside. It's all outbound only communication, which means that a lot of times we're able to communicate with IT departments and get 2 thumbs up from them in terms of a solution that's secure and that they feel comfortable with putting on their IT network. No, that's great. So this is another sort of two-parter. KMC Commander and CopperTree are both what you would consider a SaaS platform or a software as a service. There's an ongoing fee on an annual basis. At least Commander is annual, CopperTree also annual. Mm-hmm. And I think connected to that, Keith, is this question of, and this goes for analytics in general, is analytics, particularly CopperTree, a short-term solution that I'm going to put in for a year, find all my problems, fix them, and take it out? Or is it a long-term solution?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we get that from a lot of customers. So I think it can be both. We're firm believers in the long-term application of analytics, because what tends to happen is, you'll streamline a building or do what we call retro commissioning, which is essentially making sure, we bring the building back to its peak performance or even better than it had been previously. And you can look at that as a one-time initiative and just do it. But the problem is, I don't know if you've ever seen these diagrams, I don't have it handy, but basically the performance of a building will steadily degrade over time, just kind of no matter what. It's kind of like your vehicle, your car. When you buy a car, it's great, everything's great. As soon as the warranty's up, typically, things start breaking. You have to do some work to it. And so essentially over time, the performance of a building, just like anything else, degrades. So there is a lot of value in continuously monitoring that to catch those issues, because what we see a lot of times is if, there's a fee associated with the analytics and it is an ongoing fee, but you don't want to be sort of penny smart, pound foolish, as the old saying is, and not pay a couple $1,000s a year for a license of that, because what will happen is we'll find an issue that emerges that might be a $5,000 or $10,000 a year issue, and catching that 5 months earlier than you would through normal preventive maintenance, the business case makes itself for that. So it's hard to see that from the onset before you apply the analytics and start working with it. But for the most part, even our customers who think they're going to apply it for a short period get sort of hooked on it, because it does demonstrate its value continuously. So I think we're open to shorter term applications, but for the most part, I think our customers then realize, hey, this is actually a really good ongoing tool that we can use to continuously keep up with our buildings tuning. So.
Yeah, buildings drift, right? Mm-hmm. Buildings drift, set points change, overrides occur, dampers break, whatever it may be, and being able to catch those as early as possible. That's the ultimate service manager's hope, is that they never get the call, but rather they say, hey, we noticed that this was an issue in your building and it's costing you $3,200 a year. Can we help you with that? Absolutely, you can. Perfect. And so now, not only have you generated a service call and service revenue, but you've also now helped your end user in ways that, that could have affected them severely in relatively near term. It looks like you have a customer on with us, mm-hmm. and they're asking how to access the open source free algorithm library, and if you could show that to them. You could either show that now, Keith, or maybe follow up, but it's entirely up to you.
I can, you know what I'll do is I'll share real quick the Kaizen platform. Can you see that there?
Yes.
Great. So if you're in Kaizen, up at the top left-hand side, there is this little books leaning against each other. That's the community library. If you don't have access to that button, it may mean that you have a sort of read-only user account. If that's the case, get in touch with customer solutions at coppertreeanalytics.com, or just reach out to us here, us, the presenters, and we'll hook you up. But essentially, you can come in here and see, we have 2,334 fault detection diagnostics algorithms in the library. You can search for them by people's names. This is actually a customer of ours. For instance, you can come in here and you can filter the ones that are CopperTree authored. And every one of those actually has a help topic that you can click on, and it'll open up into our support page and give you a lot more information there about how that is. So by going into these, you can actually see the logic behind them. So basically the inputs, we need the command, the status, the acceptable hours of fault per week, the cost per hour, and the days of operation annually, so we can project savings, those types of things. So and if you want to contact the support team, you can just click on this little envelope here. So those algorithms are all available in the community library, and feel free to have a look through there. And if you can't do that by clicking this button, that might be that you need a different permission set, so we can help you with that if you'd like. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Oh, we had another question about pricing in general, just looking at how it's structured. So KMC Commander is structured on a tiered point basis. So how many points out of a building are you bringing into the system? A lot of times there's, thousands of points, and really the only ones that matter are maybe 2,000 or 2,500 of them. And so all we would do is our licensing is based on, that 2,500 point chunk of data. But what about CopperTree, Keith?
Yeah, so our price model is typically based on square footage of the buildings that we're doing, and we do that because in most applications we want to encourage the ingestion of as much data as we can get, and because we do like to have things like the zone systems included and other ways like that. But if for some reason that doesn't quite fit, like if it's a very non-dense building, or if we're working with KMC Commander and there's a limited number of points available, we're open to discussing that with you. But for the most part, our standard operating procedure for most of our systems integrators is a square footage based flat fee per year, as well as flat fee for implementation that is a one-time fee. So there's a one-time implementation cost in the first year, and then an ongoing subscription fee after that. But get in touch with us. We'll be happy to discuss your particular project with you and give you some information on how that works.
Received another one, and this is kind of related in terms of ROI, right? So in the case study, you talked about a particular number of savings. It appears that the energy savings was pretty significant, right? I think it was just over 2,000 for that particular case study.
10,000, yeah.
Yeah, and so is that a typical or average savings number that should be expected or achieved?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the facility, frankly, and the operation of it, the age of it, et cetera. But for the most part, we like to kind of give ranges of between 5 and 30% of energy savings. I know that's kind of a large range. For the most part, it's probably somewhere in the middle of that, about 15% energy savings. And there are some studies that were developed by, in particular, Lawrence Berkeley Labs in partnership with the Department of Energy that evaluated across the entire industry for building analytics, both for energy information systems and fault detection diagnostics, that showed that those numbers are pretty standard across the industry, and that those are achievable. And those were across hundreds of buildings that were looked at as far as projects go. We have a copy of that report if anyone is interested in seeing that. It's really good information to put in front of an end customer to justify, the application of analytics and better controls. So I would generally say, you can kind of hang your hat on 5% energy savings no matter what, sort of thing. And then I'd say 10 to 15% would be a pretty realistic target to look at.
Yeah. Especially some of the lowest hanging fruit is scheduling. And if you go into a building, there could be schedules for 9 out of 10 pieces of equipment, but it's that one culprit that got missed, right? So it's a helpful commissioning or retro commissioning tool as well.
For sure.
We have worked with multiple K through 12 customers when it comes to Commander, when it comes to our controls. We have somebody asking if we had any K through 12 customers that could be reached out or used as a reference.
Absolutely, yeah. We have on our side, anyhow, at CopperTree, several K to 12 customers that we could give you as a reference. K to 12 is an interesting submarket because it is typically, barring some of the very large high schools and middle schools, they're smaller facilities, but there are more of them. And so they typically have fewer resources available. They're spread apart. So you go to one school and there's small mechanical systems there, but you don't go there often. And it's a bit of a different application. And we do enjoy schools because we do provide the ability to really help them prioritize the limited resources that they have. It's public money, et cetera. So depending on where we're talking, there are some ISDs in Texas or, other places that are just massive. But a lot of times, these school boards don't have a lot of funds and they really need to do a lot with what little they have. So it's a really good application for analytics.
And that reminds me of a question I've heard several times is, let's say I want to apply analytics to multiple buildings. If you're working, like, let's say on a campus, mm-hmm. and there's multiple buildings, is it a separate project every single time, or is there some economies of scale there as you put the efforts in of applying analytics?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in particular, with KMC Commander, because the integration's created already from cloud to cloud, assuming these are KMC Commander customers and the data is there, really it's almost just like adding, logically adding another data range inside our application. So instead of making our API function call to say these applications in these buildings, we just go, we want to add this building and now that building, and we can expand logically. So we're not going to site, we're not adding hardware, we're not integrating to the BMS because that's already done for us with KMC Commander. So that part of it is really easy. And then I would say, back to the discussion about the algorithms in the library and applying that data en masse, the analytics en masse, we can, let's say we do a pilot or a small group of buildings for a customer, we dial in what exactly they're looking for because it is a bit of a menu. We have our standard scope that we always apply to most buildings, but we may want to look at, specific customized algorithms for a certain customer. Once we have those defined, we can store them in a repository for that customer and then apply them to each building as we expand. So we essentially create a cookie cutter. So if we have 30 schools, if we're going back to the school district example, that have very similar mechanical systems in them, and we know what the customer is looking for and how they want to be notified and all that, we can just copy that implementation across the portfolio and maybe tweak it a little bit as we encounter small differences. But it makes the scalability very good, and it makes it very economical to be able to apply analytics to larger swaths of buildings.
Well, and that's luck that we've had with K through 12 also. They have hundreds of sites, if they're a large school corporation or school district, and you're going to have multiple legacy versions of, whatever's been put in over the last 50 years, including some pneumatic stuff as well. Being able to bring all that into a centralized platform that is KMC Commander and then making it available on a standardized way to you just adds, scalability for CopperTree, but also a unification of the visibility and data at a high level for the school corporation. Any reports that you may have referenced, would those be available to share if an attendee reached out to us and asked for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I saw there was one attendee who's already asked for it, asking for it. So absolutely, I have a copy of a PDF of it, and we can certainly distribute that around to those who are interested and request it. Mm-hmm.
We've had one question from Fred. He says, are there any limitations on which BAS systems you could work with? From a KMC Commander standpoint, Commander communicates over BACnet, Modbus, or SNMP. If it's an open BACnet system, it's very simple for us to add a gateway, discover those points, and begin sending all that data to the cloud. If it's a proprietary system, that's again where we're going to lean on our relationship with Tritium Niagara to bring in those proprietary points and expose them via BACnet. And just that right there, those two options give us a huge amount of scalability in terms of what we can connect with. Some of the other things that we've run into then kind of begin with how is the PAS installed? Were things named or labeled properly? Many times what have happened when we've installed Commander is we've discovered network issues that weren't previously there. or weren't previously seen, rather. So we've been a very excellent tool for doing some network diagnostics on the onset. But once that is all figured out, we're pulling that data in. Ultimately, Keith, you could speak yourself. I don't think there's really any limit to the kind of building or BAS that you could apply analytics to.
Yeah, I mean, with the exception of no DDC controls. I mean, if we're talking about pneumatics, obviously that's an issue. Some of the very legacy old serial communication, we're talking 35-year-old, individual serial connected buildings. Those would be difficult and likely would require, we'd recommend an upgrade to the BAS before we proceed with analytics. It's kind of like souping up your horse and buggy, right? I mean, you might as well move.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, I think any DDC platform, like you said, with the ability to apply Tritium to anything and to all BACnet and SNMP connected devices, that's pretty much I'd say 99% of the buildings that we would care to analyze. So.
Yeah, well, and for anyone that's ever visited KMC, we are in the middle of a cornfield and surrounded by Amish, and so talking about souping up a buggy just kind of hit a particular nerve for me.
Yeah.
Which is good. We had another question here, and I'll ask you this, Keith. Do you work with any group purchasing organizations?
I guess that's you're asking kind of well, sometimes we do sign up with master services agreements and things like that with states, governments. I think that might be asking maybe like GSA type thing. Yeah, we're open to that. We have certain ones of it already set up with, for instance, if we're working with a state university, we've had to register with the state procurement board and those types of things. That's a little bit case by case, but we're open to that, certainly.
Yeah, we certainly have experience with GSA, and so if there's any particular organization that needs to be looked at or approved, obviously we can look at that on a case by case basis as well, see what the requirements are, and become a part of that if we can. Yeah. Let's see. I'll ask one more question, then we'll wrap up here. And I like this one because frankly, as we talk about a partnership between us and how we work together, this is one of the things I was most impressed with when we started working together. But how long would it take to connect to my data in KMC Commander to apply analytics?
Wow. Okay. Well, now that we have the connector, all built out and the APIs talking, it's probably in the order of days. It's not a very long period. I mean, we need to know certain details. We need to go into the back end of our connector and say, create a new connector instance to connect to that that particular KMC Commander deployment. And then the data is flowing. From there, we'd apply the analytics. That might take a couple of weeks, let's say, to apply and fine tune the algorithms and set up the reports and all of that. But as far as getting the data connected and ingested, it's very quick through the API, which is one of the reasons we're really excited and jazzed about working with KMC.
Your team, just in general, have always been very impressed with every phone call that we've been on, whether it was this API work or working on a case study or other projects that we've done. So it's really a pleasure to work with you, Keith, and to partner with CopperTree. And with that, I'll go ahead and close this out. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today. The recording of this will be made available within the next couple of days. We appreciate your questions so much. Reach out anytime, or if you'd like a demo, or if you need help in sales support talking to those end customers, Keith and I are here and ready to help. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful week.
Take care. Bye-bye.